There is a very specific, invisible theater that you have been performing in for most of your life. It is a performance that has no audience applause, no intermission, and no script. Yet you know your lines perfectly. It happens in the split second before you walk through a doorway. It happens when you straighten your tie or smooth your dress, not to fix the fabric, but to fix your mind. It happens when you feel your heart hammering against your ribs like a trapped bird, but you force the muscles in your face to relax into a look of calm, collected boredom. You are standing in a room full of people, nodding, smiling, engaging in the rhythm of conversation. To the outside world, you are the picture of stability. You are the person who has it together. You are the rock. But inside, there is a riot going on. Your mind is sprinting in 100 directions at once, calculating, scanning, predicting. You are terrified that if you stop moving, if you stop performing, even for a second, the entire illusion will shatter. You live with a subtle, vibrating fear that someone, Anyon, might look at you just a little too long, with a gaze just a little too sharp, and see the terrifying truth that you are making this all up as you go along. You are not just confident, you are a master architect of a persona that protects you. But here is the massive, earth-shattering realization that most people never come to. This isn't deception, this isn't lying, and you are not a fraud. What you are doing is engaging in one of the most sophisticated, high-level survival mechanisms the human brain has ever devised. You are navigating a world that rewards the appearance of certainty and ruthlessly punishes hesitation. You have learned that the currency of modern life is not always competence, but confidence. And because you are smart, perhaps too smart for your own good, you have learned how to print that currency, even when your internal bank account is empty. But this comes at a cost, a heavy, silent, exhausting cost. If you have ever felt like an imposter in your own life, if you have ever felt that your outer shell is a fortress, while your inner world is a storm, this is for you. We need to dismantle the psychology of faking it not as a weakness, but as a misunderstood form of intelligence. We need to look at why you do it, the toll it takes on your biology, and how this very mechanism, the one that makes you feel like a fake, is actually the bridge to becoming the most powerful version of yourself. Let's go deep into the mind of the high-functioning pretender. Let's be honest about what this faking actually looks like. It is not about lying on a resume or claiming you can fly a plane when you can't. It is far more subtle and far more pervasive than that. It is the micromanagement of your own existence. You have become an expert in controlled expression. You know exactly how much eye contact is dominant without being creepy. You know the precise volume to speak at, so you sound authoritative but not aggressive. You have catalogued a library of stock phrases and reactions that buy you time when you don't know the answer. You are constantly monitoring the feedback loop. How did they react to that joke? Did I smile too much? Are my hands shaking? Put them in your pockets. Look relaxed. Asterisk. This is not natural behavior. This is manual override. Most people are driving their lives on automatic pilot. You are flying the plane manually, adjusting the flaps and the throttle every single second to keep it level. And the reason you are so good at it is likely because you are highly, almost painfully, self-aware. There is a cruel irony here. The people who are truly incompetent, the ones who actually fin-shouled, doubt themselves, rarely do. They lack the self-awareness to question their own abilities. This is known as the Dunning-Kruger effect. But you are on the other end of that spectrum. You are likely hyper-competent, deeply empathetic, and incredibly analytical. You see the complexity of the world. You see how much you don't know. You see all the possible ways things could go wrong. Your fake confidence is not a sign of emptiness. It is a reaction to the sheer volume of information your brain is processing. You are faking certainty because you are smart enough to know that certainty is usually an illusion anyway. But you also know that society cannot handle that truth. People want leaders who say, "I know," not leaders who say it is complicated. So you give them what they need, while you carry the burden of the complexity alone. This creates a split in your reality. There is the public you, the avatar you send out into the world to do battle. This avatar is bulletproof. It doesn't get hurt, it doesn't get tired, and it always knows what to do. Then there is the private you, the one that exists in the car ride home, in the shower, in the moments before sleep. This version of you is tired. It is fragile. It is questioning everything. The danger arises when the distance between these two versions becomes too great. When you spend 14 hours a day as the avatar, the private you starts to starve. You start to feel like a ghost in your own machine. You feel lonely, not because you are alone, but because the people who love you, the people who respect you, are loving and respecting the mask, not the person beneath it. And you are terrified to take the mask off, because you have convinced yourself that the mask is the only thing making you lovable. This behavior didn't start yesterday. You didn't just wake up one morning and decide to become a performance artist of confidence. This was a survival strategy that you likely encoded into your nervous system years, maybe decades ago. For many, it begins in childhood. Perhaps you grew up in an environment where vulnerability was dangerous. Maybe you had a parent who was critical or emotionally volatile. You learned very quickly that if you cried, if you showed fear, or if you admitted you didn't know something, the consequences were negative. You might be ignored, ridiculed, or yelled at. So, your young brain, in a stroke of brilliance, decided to adapt. You learned that if you suffered, fine, you were safe. If you suffer, like you had the answer, the spotlight moved away from you. Or perhaps it wasn't danger, but expectation. Maybe you were the smart kid, the responsible one, the golden child. You were praised not for your effort, but for your results. You were praised for being mature, for having it together. This created a terrifying contract with the world. I am valuable only as long as I am perfect. Asterisk, to admit confusion, to admit fear, would be to violate that contract. It would mean losing the love and validation you depended on. So, you built the armor. You learned to suppress the tremor in your voice. You learned to swallow the tears. You learned to walk into a classroom, and later a boardroom, with your shoulders back, even when you wanted to curl into a ball. This pattern gets reinforced by the school system, and then the corporate world. We are taught that the person who raises their hand first is the smartest. We are taught that the person who speaks the loudest is the leader. We live in a culture that fetishizes extroversion and decisiveness. We are rarely taught the value of contemplation, of pause, of saying, I need a moment to think about that. So, you learn the rules of the game. You learn that if you hesitate, someone else will take the opportunity. You learn that if you look unsure, people stop trusting you. You are not faking confidence to trick people. You are faking confidence to buy yourself a seat at the table, where you know you belong, but where the entry fee is a swagger you don't naturally possess. What is fascinating, however, is what happens in your brain when you do this. You might think that faking confidence is purely a psychological trick, but it is deeply biological. When you are in a high-pressure situation, your amygdala, the threat detection center of your brain, is firing. It is screaming, danger, vulnerability, run. This dumps cortisol and adrenaline into your bloodstream. Your heart rate spikes, your palms sweat, your digestion slows down. This is the tremor you feel. It is your body preparing for a physical fight. But then, your prefrontal cortex, the logical executive part of your brain, steps in. It overrides the amygdala. It says, "Number, we are staying. Stand up straight, smile." This creates a high-friction state within your body. You are pressing the gas and the brake at the same time. This is why it is so exhausting. You are burning massive amounts of metabolic energy just to remain stationary and appear calm. However, there is a mechanism here that works in your favor, something called embodied cognition. The connection between your mind and body is a two-way street. Your mind tells your body what to do, but your body also tells your mind how to feel. When you force your posture to open up, when you force your breathing to slow down, when you force a smile, you are hacking your own biology. You are sending a reverse signal up the vagus nerve to your brain, saying, "We are standing like a confident person, therefore we must be safe." Slowly, the amygdala starts to quiet down. This is the secret that fake it till you make it misses. It's not about tricking tight others. It's about tricking your own nervous system into calming down, long enough for your actual skills to come online. You are using the mask to create a safe space for your brain to function. Let's reframe this entire experience. You tend to view your lack of natural, easygoing confidence as a defect. You look at those people who seem to breeze through life, who speak without thinking, who never seem to worry, and you feel envious. You think they have something you don't. But flip the lens. People who fake confidence are often possessing of a superpower called high monitor self-regulation. Because you are not naturally oblivious, you are hyper-observant. You read a room better than anyone else. You pick up on micro-expressions. You sense the shift in energy when someone enters the room. You know exactly when a joke has landed and when it has failed. Your insecurity has made you a student of human behavior. You have spent your life studying how normal people act so you can mimic them. But in doing so, you have learned the mechanics of empathy and influence better than they ever will. The person who is naturally confident often barges into a situation, unaware of how they are being perceived. They might be confident, but they might also be abrasive, tone-deaf, or arrogant. You, on the other hand, are calibrated. You adjust. You tune your frequency to match the person you are talking to. This makes you an incredible leader, a fantastic listener, and a diplomat. You are careful with your words because you know the weight they carry. You prepare more than anyone else because you are terrified of being caught unprepared. Your faking drives you to over-deliver. It drives you to excellence. The anxiety that fuels your mask is the same fuel that drives your competence. You are not good despot tight. Your insecurity, in many ways, you are good defecers. Of it pushes you to check your work 3 times. It pushes you to anticipate problems before they happen. The problem is not the behavior. The problem is the story you tell yourself about it. You tell yourself, I am a fraud. If you change that story to, I am a conscientious, high-performing individual who cares deeply about the outcome and manages my own fear to get the job done, the shame would evaporate. Despite the hidden advantages, we must acknowledge the emotional toll. There is a specific kind of loneliness that comes with being the strong one. When you are too good at faking confidence, people stop checking on you. They assume you are fine. They dump their problems on you because you seem like you can handle the weight. You become the therapist, the fixer, the rock for everyone else. And because your mask is so convincing, no one sees your knees buckling under the load. You might find yourself surrounded by people, yet feeling completely unseen. You crave for someone to look past the armor and say, hey, I know you are scared. It is okay. But you are also terrified that if they did see that fear, they would lose respect for you. This is where the soft inside comes into play. People who fake confidence are usually incredibly sensitive. You feel things deeply. You absorb the emotions of the room. This sensitivity is what you are trying to protect. You view your sensitivity as a liability, a chink in the armor where the world can get in and hurt you. But this sensitivity is the source of your creativity. It is the source of your intuition. The armor protects the soft center. But if the armor is too thick, the soft center suffocates. You cannot selectively numb emotions. If you numb fear, you also numb joy. If you numb vulnerability, you also numb connection. The goal, then, is not to get rid of the mask. You need it for survival, sometimes, but to learn how to take it off when you are safe. To find the people and the places where you can hang the armor at the door and just be the shivering, messy, imperfect human that you are. Here is the most hopeful part of this entire reality. The mask eventually becomes the face. Not in a fake way, but in a transformative way. Psychology gives us a concept called self-perception theory. It suggests that we don't just act because of who we are, we determine who we are by watching how we act. If you spend 10 years acting like a confident professional, your brain eventually looks at the evidence and says, well, we've handled 5,000 meetings, we've solved 200 crises, and we've led the team through the fire. I guess we are confident. There is a moment, and it usually happens quietly, without fanfare, where you realize you aren't pretending anymore. You are in a meeting, and someone challenges you. 10 years ago, your heart would have stopped. You would have panicked. But today, you just lean back, take a sip of water, and answer them calmly. And then you realize, wait, I didn't rehearse that. I just did it. Asterisk. This is the transition from faking to practicing. You haven't been lying to the world. You have been rehearsing the person you wanted to become. Every time you stood up straight when you wanted to shrink, you were doing a rep. You were strengthening a muscle. Think about a pilot in a flight simulator. When they first step into the cockpit, everything is simulated. The screens are fake. The landscape is fake. The turbulence is just hydraulic pistons moving the chair. But the pilot is sweating. Their pulse is racing. They are treating it as life or death. Is the pilot lying about flying? They are building the neural pathways. They are training their nervous system to handle the stress, so that when the real emergency happens, their hands know what to do without thinking. You are currently in the simulator. You are the pilot running the drills. It feels mechanical. It feels like a performance. But you are building the neural pathways that will one day allow you to fly the plane with your eyes closed. We need to redefine what courage looks like. We often think courage is the absence of fear. We think the hero is the guy who charges into battle without a second thought. But that's not courage. That's just a lack of imagination. True courage is being terrified and doing it anyway. True courage is feeling the tremor in your hands and still picking up the microphone. True courage is the person who feels like they don't belong, but walks into the room and claims their space because they know they have something to give. By this definition, the people who fake confidence are the bravest people in the room. You are fighting a battle no one else can see. You are managing your own biology, your own psychology, and the expectations of the room simultaneously. You are doing the hard work of self-creation in real time. There is a beautiful humility in this. You don't assume you are great. You strive to be adequate. You don't rest on your laurels. You are constantly learning, constantly refining. This makes you infinitely more adaptable than the person who is blindly arrogant. The imposter is actually the learner. The imposter is the one who respects the difficulty of the task enough to be intimidated by it. So, where do you go from here? How do you stop the exhaustion? The answer is not to stop faking it entirely. Sometimes the world requires the armor. The answer is integration. It is merging the avatar and the private self. It starts with small doses of truth. It starts with replacing "I know exactly what to do" with "I have a few ideas. Let's explore them." It starts with replacing the perfect plastic smile with a genuine admission of, "I'm actually a little nervous about this project, but I'm excited." When you drop the mask just an inch, something magical happens. You don't die. The world doesn't end. People don't point and laugh. In fact, usually they lean in, they relax, because they are wearing masks too. And when you show a little bit of your humanity, you give them permission to show theirs. You stop trying to impress people with your perfection, and you start connecting with them through your authenticity. You realize that you don't need to be bulletproof to be a leader. In fact, being relatable is far more powerful than being perfect. People follow leaders they trust, and it is hard to trust someone who has no flaws. By exposing a little bit of your struggle, you actually increase your confidence, because you are no longer wasting energy hiding. There is a strange moment in life that you are working towards. It is the moment when you look in the mirror and you recognize the person staring back. You see the lines of worry, yes. You see the shadow of the old fears. But you also see the resilience. You see the person who showed up day after day when they didn't want to. You see the person who built a career, a life, a reputation out of sheer force of will and practice. You realize that the fake confidence was never really fake. It was a promise you made to your future self, that you would grow into the shoes you were trying on, and you have. So, the next time you are standing in that room, and you feel the familiar rise of panic, the quickening of the heart, the urge to run, pause, take a deep breath, feel the ground under your feet, adjust your shoulders, put on the smile, not because you are lying to them, but because you are keeping a promise to yourself. You are not an imposter. You are a work in progress. And the work is working. You are not hiding. You are emerging. And the world is waiting for the person you are becoming. Keep going. You are doing better than you think.